All right, so data storytellers. Today, this is a bonus session. We had a fantastic conversation with Vivek Patel a few months ago. One of my favorite episodes. I remember I was actually doing that podcast with the Vancouver skyline behind me. We didn't have the studio ready. And I really enjoyed the conversation. Our audience loved it as well. And we brought back Vivek for a round two because we're going to talk about scaling analytics in the enterprise. And he seems to have some answers. So Vivek, welcome back on the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So actually, you and I had a follow-up conversation because from our podcast, you also liked some of the bits, and we had this follow-up dialogue about change management and how to actually scale analytics in the business. I was happy to see just literally today they shared an article about a change management playbook called P.A.C.E. Immediately caught my attention. I was very glad that we had this call scheduled or can actually unpack it. So basically scaling enterprise analytics with P.A.C.E. In the introduction, you mentioned that folks have been asking you a ton about your method and approach to driving successful teams and solutions for large and small organizations. But I was one of those folks. So I would love to hear your thoughts around this. So first of all, I always like to sell the problem first. And maybe this could be a short reminder for those who haven't listened to our previous episode. What are we actually going to talk about today and why?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about kind of the problems that come with analytics teams or what a lot of practitioners, face is you have a lot of organizations that hire up analytical talent, but they don't necessarily provide the tools that are necessary for you to scale, right? And scale your team, make it successful, and ensure that what you're building has longevity to it and it has organizational buy-in so that you can continue to grow, right? Because if you think of analytical functions, we're not talking analysts or finance analysts or marketing analysts. We're talking about centralized analytical functions, folks that are building models, that are curating data, that are building true analytical solutions. These are, in most parts, net new additions to an organization. And when you start, maybe you're given yourself as a single resource, or they let you hire one or two folks. And then you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I grow this thing to grow my impact? And the things that I have experienced, right? Trying to build, it's like building a startup within a large company or a small company. Is when I did it at Intel a few times, when I'm doing it currently at my current role, the way that you have to try and drive scale within an organization is really challenging, and it's different. And if you don't have the right perspective of how to embed yourself within, the core of what your business does, it becomes incredibly hard to scale your team, right? It's easy to become incredibly frustrated and say, okay, well, how do I go from 3 to 5 to 20 to 30 to 40 to 50? And how do I increase my reach? And so it's really important to kind of, stand back and think about, okay, what is a legitimate way for me to scale this organization and this capability within, this big company that we're trying to build?
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that a lot of people already brought their notebooks out and are ready to take notes. Again, in the spirit of including everyone in this conversation, I know we talked about this on the podcast, but what were some of those key experiences that you've had? Maybe your track record in positioning you to actually come up with this playbook in the first place?
Yeah, so I started my life in banking, and so my background is in economics, right? It's a business background and economics background. I have an MBA and some technology management, and influencing, right? The influencing portion of it was really important to me because, I'm generally an introverted person and I'm not really good at talking to people, and so, trying to figure out how to influence folks is really important to me. And so when my background, when I first started in banking, as an analyst, as a risk analyst, as somebody that had to utilize data to make, decisions for folks, credit decisions for individuals, it was really hard to get access to information, right? To build the models, to build the, to drive the analysis that could, make an informed decision. It would take, a week or maybe even two for IT to come back with the information that I needed. And so I took the skills that I had, the some coding skills that I learned in my economics classes, econometrics classes, the statistical courses that I had. I taught myself SQL, taught myself Python, and went off and tried to figure out, how do I drive good analytical solutions? And if you've ever worked in banking, right, even in the early 2010s or whenever it was DOS-based systems. Like the back end of a bank was incredibly archaic. They didn't really invest in technology, right? And you could argue that a lot of the big banks have just started investing in a lot of technologies as they see fintechs, right, become more and more prominent, right, in the environment. And so, exposure to lack of technology forced me to try and learn how do I modernize at least my processes to get better at what I do. And so as I progressed in the banking banking industry, I started taking on leadership roles that managed, analytical teams or teams of individuals that had to work with information and drive solutions and analyses and insights. And then when I moved to Intel is where I really kind of increased my acumen and scope. Right, I joined Intel as a consolidator, working in their financial teams, consolidating financial information, and at Intel, maybe there was 2,500 people in their finance team alone, and there's the organization was 110, 115,000 regular blue badges, what they call them, and then you had a bunch of contractors. I think in aggregate there was over 200,000 people, right, at any given point in time working there, and even them, they didn't have a lot of automation or data savviness when you think of like using your technical skills, programming skills, or programmatically coming to solutions. They would use Excel. Everything was in Excel. And so even at Intel, as I was a consolidator pulling information together, working with partners around the organization, we started scaling up solutions around, okay, hey, can we start building not access databases, like let's go work with IT and build, real SQL databases or use SQL Server analysis, services. Or when Power BI first came out, we were one of the first enterprises to take on, and I drove the Power BI implementation at Intel, right, for the entirety of the organization. I kind of positioned and moved myself into a place where I try to drive as much analysis and automation within the organization as I possibly could, to where they say, hey, look, there's no one else doing this. We need you to help drive, right? And they gave me 2 resources. So that's it. They said, Vivek, it's you, 2 people, help us drive automation across the organization, especially as it pertains to our financial reporting capabilities. And I said, well, that's great. But what am I going to do with just 3 folks in this large organization and all these 2,500 to even more, right? When you think of ops managers and people that are reliant on financial data to drive budget decisions, to drive execution decisions. And so we very methodically started identifying, problems within the organizations. How do we drive, it's going to go into that framework, right? P.A.C.E, problem solving. How do we drive accountability within the organization, embed ourselves within critical functions, and how do we communicate, right, with individuals the right way and provide solutions the way that they need it? And then how do we drive the work back to the analyst community so that they can, they have some ownership, they're empowered to do work. And, we have the ability to scale, centralized models to be customized for those end users, right? And so we were able to take our team of 3. By the time I left Intel, we scaled it to about 35 folks in 2 years by self-funding, right? Finding $1 billion here, finding 500,000 hours of efficiencies there. Like we started going really fast. And as we started growing capabilities within the organization, the funding and the people and the resources just started presenting themselves, right? So that's at Intel. And then as I moved into Ampere, I now oversee Ampere's global IT operations. But I was originally hired in to manage their enterprise data management capabilities. And so overseeing their platforms, technology, their cloud technologies for data and enterprise usage of data within the organization as well. And so even here, again, we're a smaller semiconductor organization that's scaling faster than any organization I've ever seen. And my challenge is, how do I take this team and start scaling their capabilities so that we are critical, right, to everything that happens within the organization?
And why I also told you when we caught up that, this topic, let's make sure to find some time and record it, is because we hear it all the time now in the community. Look, this is what I'm looking at. I need to get any resource I can get my hands on so that I can scale analytics or scale AI in the business. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I recorded a data story with Ankur Manake, one of our alumni, who's a senior director of analytics solution at Honeywell. So you guys probably can relate. Big B2B brand. And we talked about that, and we kind of unpacked his playbook. And your approach is different, obviously, with a lot of commonalities, because we're all looking to achieve similar success. So first of all, who is this playbook for? Who would you say that are in the right position to benefit from the playbook in general?
Yeah. So I honestly believe that this is incredibly helpful for those individuals that are responsible for growing an organization or capability within their organization, right? So you're small, right? You're not being hired in and you don't have unlimited resources. If you did have unlimited resources, please tell me. I'd love to work where you work, right? You don't have unlimited resources. That's the reality of everybody's situation. And so you're an individual that has to make decisions on how to grow your team and how to drive capabilities and efficiency and optimizations and business process enhancements, all that kind of stuff within your organization, right? It is on you to help figure out how to drive all these impacts with the limited resources that you have, right? And then utilizing those limited resources to start scaling up your team and scaling your reach, right? Broadening your reach within the organization.
So let's say that person is listening right now. Probably there are many people in that exact position listening right now. So P.A.C.E, you already mentioned what the acronym stands for, but maybe we can take it one by one. So the first one is problem solving. So what do you mean by problem solving, and how will this become actionable in the book?
Yeah, this is one that took me a little bit to kind of, because problem solving sounds really, really, really like, of course, you're going to solve a problem. Like, what else are you going to do? But the thing with it is, when you start getting into the world of data and analytics, the thing you want to do is you want to go after the super sexy problems. You know, the ones that are really cool. Like, I want to build an algorithm that does this, or I want to create an ML solution that can go off and get trained on a bunch of information and come back and provide insights on that. Like, you want to drive those really big data science-y feeling solutions, right? And that's good. But what people don't tell you all the time is that a majority of the time, those like projects don't really materialize into anything. And that's a really okay answer if you're driving a data science team, right? If you're driving a data science team and all your job is to just go off and drive analyses, you inherently know that a lot of the time you're just going to be wrong, right? What is this? I mean, data science is you're wrong. You're just trying to be the least wrong person in the room, right? When you're trying to drive and scale an analytics organization, you have to start thinking about beyond just the really cool AI solutions or broad umbrella ML solutions. You want to start thinking about, automation and real business problems that exist within your environment. These aren't like really super amazing things. These could be really boring things. Data governance, like, to some people, is incredibly boring, but is critical for you to be able to scale analyses across the organization. And so if you start looking at problems like real, not duct tape solution, like how do I drive automation at this level? Like, you start looking at problems that are core to your business. Why are my transactions not coming through our ERP accordingly? Well, it's because, these little things don't work here. And, we're getting a data feed from another outside vendor and it's not coming in cleanly. Well, could your data team ingest the information, write some logic on top of it, and be able to drive the solution back into the ERP? And could you then output a report that could drive some analysis for us? Absolutely. That's not the first type of problem you go off and try to solve, but that is a problem that is critical within your organization. And so if you go try to solve a data sciencey problem, sure, it looks cool. But if you go and solve the transaction problem in the ERP and try driving analytics there, well, now you're doing something that's core to the business, because an ERP is core to everything that runs within an organization anyways. And so when you're thinking about problem solving, you want to make sure you're solving things that are core to the issues that exist within your environment, not just the cool analyses that everybody wants to do.
So it's more like a targeting advice here of, look, problem
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
and that's such a good point, because actually I never realized, because no one really articulated it, it's kind of like water to a fish, is that in data science, data scientists and people in analytics are usually pretty good at solving problems just because of the nature of the field, right? Um, and this means that, okay, you have this powerful tool, maybe shift the focus a little bit and get closer to core issues in the business. So direct that kind of laser cannon, if you will, and just get closer to the fire, because it will pay dividends to you in the long run.
Exactly. And again, you're not chasing things that are flashy. You're chasing things that are, again, transactions in a system don't sound amazing, right? It doesn't sound like you could sell this to any, but if you go in and fix the transaction in the system, you're impacting way more people downstream than anybody else would. And you're embedding yourself to core functions within the organizations, which is really, really, really important. Because as you're trying to scale your team, one of the things that you have to go off when you're influencing individuals to get resources to say, how do you actually drive change within the organization? How are you impacting the organization? And if you're consistently in these cycles of trying to drive really cool analyses and not materializing in anything, it's going to be really hard for you to do that. So you have to work in solving problems that are core to your business function.
Quick question on that. How do you have a playbook, or even just maybe a high-level roadmap on how to find these problems, how to find the right problems? Do you have any kind of specific approach on asking the right questions from the right people, looking in the right places? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I can't remember where I read it. I think it was something from Motorola, something like 5 whys or something, right? Which is, when somebody comes to you with a problem, keep asking why until they can't answer it, right? My report doesn't work. Why? Well, it's because these things don't line up. Why? Well, it's because the transaction for this thing is coming in wrong in this system, so I got to do this thing over here. Why? Well, that transaction is coming in wrong because the data feed's coming in through an SFTP upload as a CSV file, and the vendor keeps changing things around there. Well, cool. But why? It's because we haven't talked to the vendor and haven't set up a standard process. Cool. Let's go back over to that vendor, set up a standard process, get the template in appropriately, and then we can ETL the data in appropriately, and then your report will come out the way it needs to look. Like, keep pushing back and driving your data solutions as far upstream as you possibly can. A lot of folks stop with the problem. Hey, my report's not working. Well, cool, Laszlo. Like, I'm just going to go off and build you a Power BI report. I'll ingest the data as it is, put a bunch of logic on top, and maybe it breaks someday in the future. Maybe it doesn't. It's not my problem. I'm going to have another job. And so, like, some people stop, and a good data and analytic function, good data and analytic organization starts digging deep until they get to the root, right, of the problem, the business process problem. And then you have to go and deal with business process owners. You have to go deal with the politics within the organization. You have to go deal with a whole bunch of folks that you don't necessarily want to. But that's how you drive sustainable changes within the organization. That's how you drive sustainable solutions within the organization. And you're driving, and you're solving real problems.
And a lot of times we say that, hey, look, you can't just be a reporting vending machine. You got to be a trusted advisor. You got to be a consultant, internal consultant. In fact, if you pursue this to its conclusion, you will become an entrepreneur. And now, this whole idea of a consultant, well, that's actually what a good consultant does. They come into the business, they have a mission which does have like a certain label, but as they start digging, have to deal with all this mundane stuff and things that no one else wants to deal with. And a lot of times it's just actually solving simple problems and getting to that point when you actually understand that, hey, for this big issue that we have, these small problems, that's what's actually keeping us at night. Let's get rid of that. And in and of itself, just by that posture, you become valuable, right? Because suddenly things start to move.
Yeah, agreed, 100%.
So that's problem solving. All right. So what's A? What's the second letter?
A is accountability. This is a really important one. It is, when you think about KPIs within an organization, or you think about solutions you're driving within an organization, it is really important that your solutions are being used to hold the organization accountable. What that means is, I'm building a KPI. Well, cool. Are you just stating facts? We have 1,000 employees. Great. Now, does that drive any level of accountability within the organization? Probably not. So let's figure out how we can make these reports result in something that can actually drive change within the organization, that leaders can utilize to hold people accountable within the organization, because that's how you build solutions that, again, individuals are relying upon, right? Because anybody can come out and write a SQL statement or write something and build a report that has a bunch of facts on it. But the second that your report is the one that is utilized to actually drive change, not just change, to actually hold individuals accountable and drive the business forward, that's when you really know that your team is critical to the function of the organization. And so, like, say you're building a travel and entertainment, report. Well, can you utilize that travel and entertainment report to build functions and KPIs within there that can point out, here are the anomalous spends that are happening in the environment. Here are individuals that are over the allotment, or over budget. Here's who's under budget. And here's where you need to kind of target your focus. And here's how you as a leader need to, and it's individualized for leaders. And you can say, here are the individuals that you need to go focus on. Here are the business areas that you need to go focus on. Here's the accounts that you need to go focus on. If you can use your solutions to help individuals and leaders at the organization hold everybody else accountable, then they are reliant upon you to be able to drive those solutions or continue to build and drive those solutions. And so it's kind of the so what, of an analysis, right? There's I'm building an analysis, fantastic. I'm putting it on a report, amazing. And if a leader ever asks you, okay, so what does this mean? You've already lost them. Your report should already tell them, what does this actually mean? So what, right? And so holding folks accountable and building reports that can hold folks accountable is really important. And it's one of the ones that I haven't really thought about, right? My A was actually originally going to be adoption, which is really important too, but that comes in empower. I think accountability, if you can embed your solutions in a manner where leaders and managers within the organization are utilizing it to hold their organizations and their peers accountable, you're already kind of a critical function. Your team becomes a critical function within the organization.
So I think this will be an aha moment for a lot of people, because when we talk about accountability, a lot of times it comes up in the conversation about data governance, obviously, but this is almost like a more meta application of the concept of accountability, which I really like. So for those people who are having these epiphanies right now, can you maybe just highlight some either real examples or hypothetical examples that would help bring this to life for people? So what would be a solution that helps leaders, business leaders, to keep others accountable that you can build as a data analytics practitioner? I have ideas, but maybe you can give me some.
Yeah. I'll do a few, and you can go with a few too. The easiest ones are in the space of probably HR, so what we call at Ampere people and culture, and then finance, right? These are cost centers. And they're what you can think of as controllable spends within that environment, right? And so everything you spend on software, on hardware, on travel and entertainment, everything has a budget associated with it. So the easiest thing that you as a data and analytic organization can do is help your finance team build an automated budget tracker for the organization. You can build an automated headcount pipeline for your organization. And what these solutions will do is you can say by account, right? By account type, what are you spending? What was your annual budget? The budget is the so what, because if you can tell people what the delta is between what they're spending by account and what their budget was by account, and you can drill into transactions, you can drill into it and see the expense reports. This is one that we've actually built. You can continue to drill into a T&E and you can see the expense report. You can see what Vivek expensed and what he was spending money on. I, as a budget leader or a budget owner, can quickly go in and say, well, holy cow, I'm 20% over my travel and entertainment budget. And Vivek went off and flew business class to where now? Like, let me go and figure this thing out, right? You're driving analyses at a level where leaders will start looking at it and saying, well, not only does this make me a better organizational leader because I can manage my budget better and understand my spending, but now I can look at all my purchase orders. I can look at, my trends. I can see where I'm going to end up spending. I can see where I'm over, where I'm under. I can see who the biggest offender within my organization is. If I have a large organization of 2,500 people, right? People at Intel had 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 employees within their departments, providing them a singular view where they can see their world, the so what, the deltas, and be able to manage it down to a level of granularity if they needed it, was game changing. And not just that, they started utilizing it and saying, holy cow, if I had this earlier, maybe I would have been able to control our spends, understand how we can push more money to R&D, make all these different trade-off decisions easier. I can hold individuals within my organization accountable, right? I can say, hey, you know what, Vivek, you are overspending in these software categories. You told me you were going to come in here, but you actually started spending up here. Do we need to adjust things down? Where are your trade-offs? What are you going to do over here? You start driving different levels of conversations within the organization. And the data and analytic team is core to being able to pull all that information together, because creating a singular view with all accounts, forecast, actuals, drillable down to a document line detail is incredibly difficult. And on top of that, you add in geography and all these different vectors and attributes that you can bring in. It's really hard to put together. But once you do, you basically build kind of this one-stop shop from a financial perspective to allow leaders to go off and manage their business better. That's one tangible experience that we deployed at Intel and now at Ampere as well. That's making a ton of difference.
I even see this. It's obvious, but at the same time, I see how closely connected this is to even the previous point, because as you were talking, my example would have been in sales, for example, especially high volume sales, when managers have a hard time kind of cracking the whip on follow-ups, right? So follow-ups, we've heard it's a lot, especially B2B companies, but not just B2B, but again, high volume sales, managers keeping track of how diligent are salespeople in follow-ups, because salespeople are notorious usually for following that gut. Sales is a relationship game, but it's just as much a process game as a relationship game. And for example, if you can build a solution, and it's not even that difficult, and I know for a fact that it's been done 1,000 times, where based on lead score, basically the manager could get unified reports and notifications on lack of follow-up from owners of the leads specifically. Then he can easily tie, let's say, a North Star metric for the team to that. And the whole solution that you provide basically does the job for the sales manager. So the actual problem the sales manager has, it's not even a lack of revenue. It's a management issue for him, and the human element that you can resolve with a technology solution, or at least make his life as easy as possible. So basically, if you sit down and talk to the sales leader and you look for a lack of accountability or pain flowing from a lack of accountability, then easily you can come up with this solution, which is actually not that hard to put together. Depending on the CRM and all that stuff, but for a qualified data science team, that's not the biggest challenge ever, right?
Well, and this actually dives into the next one, which is communication, which is, okay, you're going to come up with this solution, which is fantastic, but how do you make it such that these folks are using it on a regular basis? Now, there's this big divide still, right? Most executives have been around for 20, 30 years. And so they know Excel. Excel was cutting edge to them, right? We talked about this in our last conversation. There's this technology divide, right? There's us, I say us, but there's people younger than me. But there's folks that like using the fancy dashboards, right? So you have, Power BI, Click, Grafana, all these different solutions, even, just custom dashboards with Python. And in the back of your mind, you're like, man, I really want my manager to use these fancy dashboards. Why wouldn't you? They're great. They're good. They're on the browser. You could use your phone. You can do whatever you want. It's just there. But they don't use it. And so the other piece is, we can drive accountability and we can get all these reports built. You can build the sales tool, right? The leads generation is a fantastic idea. You could do all that activity, but then how do you actually enable them to hold their teams accountable? And so what I found is there's folks that love emails. There's folks that love PowerPoints. There's folks that love just a document that shows up. And so we've built different mechanisms to communicate with people, meeting them where they are. So if you just want to report on your top 10 offenders by account For folks that are over budget, well, I can send you an email at the end of every week that gives you a rundown of your financial situation, and the system just sends it. Poof. If you want to see the dashboard, you can click the dashboard and it'll open up a dashboard in the browser, and you can click around or you can use your phone, but it shoots you an email. If you want to see all of your purchase orders and the fulfillment of those purchase orders, meaning how many of them are close to consumption so that you need to open up a new purchase order or whatever it is, I can send you a PO consumption report every week, every day, every hour. You tell me. And my team can get that automated for you and send it out to you. Emails, PowerPoint, we can automatically generate a PowerPoint. I can embed a Power BI report in a PowerPoint for you. I can, have the team build an analysis that will churn out a PowerPoint report, create little text boxes where you could type in your explains for those information, the pieces that you're providing to folks, and you can send that off to individuals. There are so many different ways for us to meet people where they are, and it's not hard. We often try to guide these individuals like herding cattle or sheep, right? But they are incredibly strong-willed individuals that make way more money than we do and care way less about the technology, and they care more about just having the materials, right? The information that they can make decisions. And so it's really important to be able to communicate where they are. And so stop trying to make them consume it the way that you want them to. Provide it in a way that they want to consume it. And once they get used to the data, then maybe you can put a little link down there to say, click here to see the dashboard. The number of folks that I've gotten to become, folks that consume reports in Power BI that never wanted to see a dashboard in their life, I've lost count because they start seeing the report and they're like, okay, now I'm comfortable with this. I want to start playing with it. But there's a link. Click the link. Oh, this is easy. This feels like PowerPoint. Start clicking around because I make the report look like a PowerPoint. Now they can start clicking around. They can start playing with it. Oh, now I can see it in my PowerPoint presentation. When my analyst is going through, they can click through the data. That's fantastic. You start moving people towards there, but you never start with huge change. So communication is really important. How you communicate and provide information is really, really critical. Also, stop using pie charts. I think we talked about this last time. I think pie charts are like the single worst. Pie charts and the radars. There's no need. The gauges, right?
Trick question. What if your stakeholder loves pie charts? Do you meet them where they are, or that's the line? That's like
you meet them where they are. I want them to adopt. So you meet them where they are with the pie chart, and then maybe a few iterations later, you put the bar chart next to it, and you say, "Hey, look, isn't this a little bit easier for you to look at than the pie chart?" And they're like, "Yeah, that is actually easier." Then you just replace it. You have to meet with them where they are, and then you start moving them towards. Change.
I love it. Also because, your C in communication is not just because we hear this all the time. Look, as a data science practitioner, you got to communicate well. Well, thank you very much. It's like excellent advice. But that actually you have a very actionable piece there, which gets lost all the time, especially because the data science is an innovative field. I think there's a subconscious pressure that, hey, as a data science professional, I need to get people to use the newest, best stuff. If they communicate via email, right? That obviously my job is to put them on this hyper data-driven, analytics-fueled messaging solution because it's so much better than email, right? Obviously, it's not a real example, but the principle applies. But in fact, no, you meet them where they are. It's almost like a mind frame shift, and it will just get you all the results that otherwise would be just hidden from you. And this is also something that actually comes up when we talk to people about how to tell stories. I think it's surprising. Storytelling a lot of times, it's like, hey, this is a visionary thing. I'm just lead people into this brave new world. Ultimately, yes, but pace and lead. And the pace you cannot go around. That's the essential part. I would say that's even the more important piece, to have proper pacing. And then as you pick up the pace, right, then you can lead them. And I always bring this example. Right now, we're also working on an article and a playbook on the Apple style of customer obsession and marketing and branding. And this is such a great example. As you were talking, I probably because I'm just gonna immerse in the topic, is that both Microsoft and Sony really try to roll out different solutions with PDAs. There was a big thing of how you can use pen to click the PDA. People just didn't want to do it. People simply didn't want to do it. But why? Why aren't you not doing it? Don't you see how amazing it is? Here's like a huge marketing campaign telling you how amazing the pen is. And obviously I'm telling you now, and you will use the pen. People didn't use the pen. So what Apple did is that they just went back to the basics, met the customer where they were. iPhone creates a whole category, even though the solution itself existed in other places. And to kind of add insult to injury and to be really audacious, years later, they bring out the Apple Magic Pen, the only pen that people actually use, right? Because they properly niched the product towards creatives, right? So I kind of love this approach. It's a perfect example of pacing and leading.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I'm trying to pull up the diagram here. I won't be able to share it, but like Apple, I mean, so there's a book that everybody reads in business school, Crossing the Chasm, right? I remember reading this book years ago in business school. But most data science practitioners, like you said, they were innovators or early adopters. And so I'm always on news, like different news feeds or Reddit or something, to try and figure out what the newest, latest thing is. My wife hates it because I keep buying new tech, and some of it works, some of it doesn't, and it just kind of sits, right? So she's like, stop. Apple is a really good example of somebody that doesn't cater to innovators or early adopters. Now they're creating, they have the VR goggles and it's like $3,500. So that's maybe early adopters. But a majority of the products that they sell, they're trying to target kind of that early, late majority phase and the laggards. So think about how long it took your folks to move from a flip phone to a smartphone. Now, that same thing applies to your leaders, right? You're trying to move them from a flip phone to a smartphone. And you might be used to having a smartphone for decades or for years, right? They're just getting there. And so you have to start sitting down and walking them through, meeting them where they are. Critical functions. Here's the phone. Here's the calendar. Here's the email. Here's the iMessage app. Here's how you type. Use your thumbs. You don't use your fingers anymore. Like it's just, they have to build the muscle, and they don't have it. And we assume they do because we're in a different, we're in a different portion of that chasm. And so it's in that distribution. So it's really, 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 I'm glad you brought it up because it just jogged, my thoughts here. But when you're a data leader, you are not trying to cater your solutions to early adopters or innovators. There's no way your entire organization is early adopters and innovators. A majority of your normal distribution, majority of them, maybe early majority, but most of them are late to laggards. And how do you build solutions for those folks?
Such a good point. And actually what we hear from data teams, especially the leaders who try to figure out like what are some of the bottlenecks in their team, that data scientists, a lot of times these PhDs, a lot of times they're young, so like super innovative, they find it either demeaning to kind of meet people at that level, or condescending, or they feel like they are being patronizing with like this. But here's the flip. Actually, this is just good storytelling. That's what you're doing when you do that. And this changes the whole game, right? Because then what Helen, this is why we find this helps, because then actually data teams realize, hey, wait a second. Like, oh, I actually have a skill gap, storytelling. So suddenly now it's much easier to kind of get where people are. I loved how you framed it. And then you already alluded to the final piece, which is empowerment. So when adoption came up earlier, you mentioned that will be included in the empowerment piece. So what is this empowerment piece?
Yeah. So, I mean, just going off of communication, which is, you talked about storytelling. I don't think anybody's going to pretend to say, if you're a data function within IT, you're any good at storytelling for the business. Or if you're a central function within a large organization, that you're the only person or the only organization that can do storytelling for the organization, right? Most good data and analytic functions, central functions, right? If you're a leader of a team, that is a central function. This is not your embedded, but a central function. You're good at getting things 80 to 90%. You can get the data right. You can get some of the visuals right. You can get the data flows created, the pipelines built. You can build out the CI/CD pipelines. You can do all the technical ins and outs, and you can get the data exactly where it needs to be. But people can only iteratively provide you requirements to such a degree to where you meet your limitations because you're not a subject matter expertise in their domain. And so you need to create solutions in a manner that can empower the individuals that you're catering the solutions to be able to take it on and complete it. Finish that last, you finish the last mile, the last 10%, doesn't matter what you want to call it. But so many times I've seen analytical solutions or data solutions or ML solution, whatever it is, fail because some central team goes off and builds something. They deliver it to the end users, doesn't meet 100% of what they need. They try to utilize the solution, and then in a couple of months, you go back and you talk to them, hey, so how's it going? And they're like, oh yeah, we're back to using the old thing. Like we just stopped using this thing. Or you look at your usage metrics and it starts going like this, and you're like, wait, why are they not utilizing this thing? They should be utilizing it. It's incredibly frustrating. And what I found is people still need ownership over the solution. And when you're a central function, you can, unless you actually own the process, you need to build it in a way where you can provide them a majority of the solution and let them customize it to meet their business needs. And that is the only way you're going to be able to, not only way, but that is one of the most profound ways for you to get them to adopt what you're building. It's that last little mile that is incredibly difficult for most data and analytics organizations to complete. And it also requires you to give up ownership. And it's really hard because, a lot of teams, a lot of folks are trying to build their fiefdoms and build their scale and build their influence within the organization. And if I give this solution over to, if I'm building that report for finance, the actuals and forecasts, if I give it to finance and then they build a report, then they publish it, and then they go show it to, they're the people that it doesn't matter, right? For me, I was like Wizard of Oz, the person behind the curtain, right? I just care about getting people to use data. And as long as I do that, my leaders will see it. They know finance isn't going off and putting the data together, but we enabled them to go off and build exactly what they needed to for their customers. They're the subject matter expertise, subject matter experts, sorry. And in the event that they don't know how to build, we upskill them and show them, we build a shell, customize it to however you need to. Here's how you're going to be able to publish it. Here's the security model we're going to help you build on top of it. Have at it. Go drive adoption. I just want people to use data. That's all I care about at the end of the day. And so empower people within your organization to drive the solution at the end of the day. That is the way for you to gain adoption of a solution. Because if you cannot, this is for larger organizations. If you're a small one and you, again, own the process, it's on you to do it. And you better have the subject matter expertise to do it. But when you're a central function like IT, or you report into a CDO, or you're just a central data and analytics function that's your job is to just get data together and build reports, you're a report shop, like you talked about earlier, you're just a machine cranking out reports, the utilization is not ever going to be there unless you can get the citizen developers, the people out in the business, to come in and be a part of your solution and empower them to build.
So this is really cool because the last mile problem, it comes up all the time in the community. In fact, one of the popular data stories we have is from Francisco Rios from Minecraft. He's the senior director of data science there. And he has a playbook on integrating analytics into the organization. In fact, how to achieve this integrated analytics state when you're not only descriptive, but not only predictive, and not only prescriptive, but you're integrated. And the last mile is like one of those bottlenecks. And so let me see if I get this right. So your proposition to this, for this, is that basically two things. One is that you don't finish the solution, you let the stakeholder actually take care of the last mile. But at the same time, you kind of provide follow-up support. So it's both being involved, staying involved, but at the same time, letting go of control. Did I get that right? Or am I like kind of reading
That's absolutely correct. And that's how you scale it as well, right? Because when you're a central function and you're supporting thousands of end users, there's no way you're going to build that many reports and be able to manage all of them. There's not going to be that many, there's no way you can manage that many analytical solutions, whether they're models or whatever it might be, and be able to manage all of them. So either you become the bottleneck, or you become eventually on someone's income statement, you become a humongous cost center. They're like, wait a second, why is Vivek getting this much money? What does he need $5 million for a data and analytics team? That's a crazy sum of dollars. Like, is he driving that much value? At some point, it just is not scalable for you to drive everything 100% and then be able to manage it 100%. And so the way that we do it, very hub and spoke, right, is central organization manages the core of the solution. We make sure the data is correct. We make sure governance is in place. We make sure the job monitoring is in place. We have 99% uptime. You have the metrics out there so people can see, yes, this thing refreshed at this time, red, yellow, green indicators. Yep. This source refreshed, this source refreshed, this source. There's reliability in the solution. My job. But then once I build that, the core solution, our team builds a shell of a report. We call it a showcase. We say, here's everything that's in this model. Here's everything you could possibly do. And we deliver it. And within the teams, so within finance, sales and marketing, within engineering, people and culture, within all these teams, we have champions. We have analyst communities that are going off and then receiving these solutions and saying, okay, I get it. I'm going to go off and build my thing. And they go off and build it. And we provide them the ability to publish their reports. If they're using Python, they could use their own Python libraries and do their analysis and be able to publish them. They could use Power BI. They could create email solutions. They could do whatever they want, right? We help guide them to that solution because at the end of the day, they can manage the output. And so you start scaling to thousands of reports in the environment. You have core enterprise reports. Those will never go away. Those are built into your ERP. You have core close reports. Those will never go away. No one's going to replace them. You're not going to have a million of them. Close is done off of a few set of reports. Financial statement reporting, few set. But all the other analytical reports that you guys are working on, go build. And you manage them. I'm going to make sure the data is correct. And so now you're pushing the onus on the business, but not just that. They're actually going to drive adoption because it's that analyst that's a subject matter expert. He knows, she knows, they know how everything needs to be built for that GM. They know how everything needs to be built for that GM. They know how everything needs to be put together for that CFO over there. They can build it. Data's correct. It's always available. My team doesn't have to even think about managing that data platform or their report. All we do is make sure data's correct and folks can drive insights. That's all. And that has enabled us to scale way faster than trying to centralize ownership, right? Or for me to say, yeah, you know what? I want to own all the solutions. I don't care, right? That doesn't matter to me. My metric, I have basically run it like a software development team. Monthly average users, monthly unique users, daily average users, daily unique users, see them by organization, see them by job type. I can see who's accessing how, and I can see utilization go up. I know people are using data. That's all that matters to me.
And it's almost like you letting go of control, that what enables you to set all these fires across the business, and suddenly it's a wildfire in a good way, not like what we have here on the West Coast.
And no. And it does spread. And yeah, there's going to be some redundancy in reports. That's okay. But at its core, no one's creating local data repositories. They're all using the data solutions that our teams are providing. So if there's a data and analytic, there's a headcount report over there for this team and a headcount report over there for this team. Well, it maybe took them a half an hour to put that report together. It's refreshing all the time. I don't care if there's two of them. The data inside, it's the same, right? They're not localized databases that are living under someone's desk. That is the thing I don't want. I also don't want 1,000 Excel reports everywhere. So getting rid of that as well. So as long as they're using connected data solutions and they're driving insights within their organization, it's going to drive adoption. And people are going to be using the data that they need to make decisions. And that's kind of how I focus on empowering, right? I need to build things in a manner where somebody else can then take them and then build upon them.
I love it. So yeah, this was a powerful playbook. It was super actionable as well. I loved how, all the acronyms, apart from like the big picture orientation, also had these action items. So, we'll make sure to kind of riff on that with the production team, and we'll produce something like a cool mini movie from this. For the sake of that mini movie as well, would you mind kind of giving a short final summary, like an 80-20 type of rundown of, okay, data analytics leader in a big company, you want to scale your analytics solution. To recap, this is how you can use P.A.C.E.
Yeah. Oh, you want me to do it right now?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Just like a quick rundown to finish the podcast too.
Yeah. So look, if you're a leader within an organization and you're just starting out, or you've even been around for a little bit and you have a small team and you're trying to figure out, okay, how do we make an impact within this organization? How do I drive something? We presented this P.A.C.E. framework, right? But if you think of it from a flow perspective, you need a critical business problem that you're solving. Solve a problem. Problem solve, right? It has to be something critical. And ask those whys. We talked about it within this podcast or this conversation. Ask the whys, right? Why is this thing breaking down? Why? Okay, well, it's breaking down because of that. Why? And you as a data and analytic practitioner, instead of building just the surface level automation, start driving core business change. Go work with the business process owners and work to automate where the data actually is breaking down and drive the reporting solutions from there, right? Because then you can create solutions that can drive accountability within the organization. You can build solutions where leaders and managers can use your solutions to hold individuals, organizations within your world accountable and drive business decisions using your reports, right? And then using those reports or communications, right? C is communication. You could use emails, you could use PowerPoints, you could use Power BI. Don't get too hung up on trying to get people to see the world the way you want them to, or use the technologies that you want them to. Not everybody wants a fancy dashboard. Some people just want an email every single week. Get them to them. Because at the end of the day, your goal should be for them to use data. And you want them to use that data that's reliable, that you've been able to put together in a manner that is always available when they need it, right? We don't think of real-time solutions. We think of, what a colleague of mine, Kyle, at Intel, put together. He said, right time. People just want to see solutions when they want to see it. It doesn't need to be real-time. It just needs to be at the right time. It needs to be available when it's available. And communicate it. Emails, PowerPoint, does not matter. Meet them where they are. And then at the end of the day, you have to empower individuals within the organization to build. Because if you're a central function, you, for the most part, may not be the subject matter expertise, right, that is required, or may not have that expertise that is required to drive the solutions within the organization. And so if you can build the core solution that the organization needs, and then upskill the teams to start taking those solutions and building for their key constituents, their key partners, you're going to drive adoption within your organization of your data solutions way faster than if you're trying to just build the solutions and drive it yourself. And so empower people within the organization to take it and relinquish some of the ownership. It's okay for you to not be the one that's driving the analysis. You can be the person behind the curtain that's just curating the data. There is value in that. Not just is there value in that, it'll enable you to scale and broaden your reach and influence within the organization much faster than you had before.
Well, I think this is like one of the best summaries that we've had for some of these playbooks. So this was awesome. I'm glad we could do the follow-up. This was our second round. I think you were maybe the second or third person who had a follow-up appearance on the podcast. So, welcome to the
awesome
prestigious group. It was well earned and well deserved. So this was fantastic, and I know that our listeners and audience members, and especially community members, will gain a lot from this. And look, we actually hope to meet up with you. We will have a few initiatives coming up, and it will be cool to maybe showcase some of your insights on one of these events as well.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.